Hello, everyone. Glad to see you all join us this evening. All right, while we're waiting, just so I can get to know everyone a bit better, since hopefully things will be going back to somewhat normal this summer, in the comments or in the chat section, kind of write one thing that you're excited to do this summer, who you are, and what you're excited to learn about today. All right, just a little housekeeping. I just want to let everyone know we'll announce the winner of the $25 Visa gift card at the end of the presentation. But we'll also have a Q&A section right after that. So if you have any questions or just anything you want to learn more about, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can enter it in the Q&A. To the best of my knowledge, I will answer them. But if there is something a little bit outside of my knowledge, I will reach out to our IT team. So we have a member on our team, Brock. He is very passionate about fraud and ways to prevent that. So I'll be sure to pass on any questions I can't answer onto him, and then send you an email with more clarification. And then you might see a poll that pops up during the presentation. We would really appreciate if you just take the time to answer that poll, just so we know about the types of webinars you'd like us to put on in the future, and it just kind of helps us put on informational webinars that best serve you. But I have some comments here. Just read them real quick. All right, we have Roxanne, excited about travel. Me too, I don't have any plans, but just excited to have that as a possibility again. Get together with friends. Yes, I miss having parties and get-togethers as well. Oh, go to the mountains, go summer hiking. That's definitely on my to-do list as well. All right, just to let you all know, this is a recorded webinar. I will be sending you an email either today or Monday with the recording and along with any information that we covered on here as well. So if you do miss anything, you can always refer back and share it with your friends and family. All right, we're going to get started. All right, to start off, just a little bit about Fitzsimons. We are based in Aurora, Colorado. We originally started in Fitzsimons Army Hospital back in 1955 to serve the military base and, of course, the employees of the hospital as well. For those who don't know what a credit union is, just to kind of give a quick rundown, essentially we are very similar to a bank, as in we offer all the same exact products and services, checking accounts, loans, savings accounts, all those sorts of things. The big difference is we are a nonprofit, so that basically means any profits we make at the end of the year go back to our members in one way or another, and that could be just keeping our loan rates as low as possible, giving you more favorable bonuses or interest rates on your savings account so you have more money in your pocket, and just reducing our fees and that sort of thing. Some of you might have heard I use the word member, and that's because when you are part of a credit union, you're not a customer, you are a member, because essentially when you join a credit union, you are part owner of us. So basically that means you get to have a vote and say on who our board is. At a credit union, our board is completely volunteer based. We don't pay our board. So that's one way we are able to keep everything in the interest of our members as much as possible. We will be actually having our board election coming up in June. I think it's like June 23rd. So that's coming up. So if you're a member with us, you can participate in that. Our elections are only available to our members, of course, but that is just one thing I'd like to note. We offer all the latest and greatest when it comes to tech. We have of course, our online banking, mobile banking, and we are constantly coming up with new features to keep your account safe and just to make sure you have the ability to bank at a time and place that is convenient for you. Another cool thing about credit unions is we are part of what is called a shared branch network. And that basically means you can pretty much go into most other credit unions and do transactions just as if you were at your home credit union here at Fitzsimons. That network is also pretty sweet because it's also part of a surcharge fee-free ATM network. So basically that means you can go to those ATMs and you won't get paid that pesky $2, $3 charge for taking out money that's essentially yours. So those ATMs are part of other credit unions, and pretty much, for example, most ATMs you'll see inside of a 7-Eleven are part of that network as well. Now on to the stuff that you are all here for, which is all about the fraud and scams. So some of the things we'll talk about is COVID-19 scams, common scams, trending scams, those sort of things, how to tell if your information has been compromised, and what you can do in that case. And of course, we're gonna show you ways that you can better protect yourself, and just tips to what to do when your information has been compromised. All right, so make sure to stay hydrated and grab your favorite beverage, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, and let's continue. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how your personal information is stolen. So we can all think of the traditional ways, we all have that image of someone that's in like a big overcoat and like giant hat that's just coming behind you, a pickpocket essentially coming in and stealing your wallet and going through it and stealing all your information and that sort of thing. Or maybe someone that is, going into your space and stealing all your documents, a stranger essentially. But in reality, that is not very common to have a stranger kind of go in and take something physical from you. It does happen, but since we are living in a digital age, a lot of those fraudsters and scammers, they kind of prefer just to get the whole gambit and kind of, steal your information from essentially, at a time and a place that's convenient for them. Things that maybe some of you have heard about is skimming and shimming. Skimming and shimming, I'll go into this a bit more later on. It's those little devices that have been put onto, ATMs, gas station pumps, where you put in your card and there's a machine that kind of scans in for that information, makes a duplicate card, or, has that information make transactions from your accounts. Data breaches, we've all heard of the notorious, Target scam breaches and those sort of things. But those are becoming more and more common, especially when it comes to the world of social media. And I'll talk about those more a bit at the end. You have scams that happen at home. So what friendly theft is basically when, you have someone that is living close to you or within your space that steals your information. Historically, friendly fraud or friendly theft dealt with, let's say, you had an uncle who, might have access to your child's documents such as their social security card and those sort of things. And from having access to those documents, they're able to open up credit and those sort of things. And that is historically what friendly theft, has been, and it still is an occurrence. But, since many of us happen to have like roommates, or maybe you're sharing spaces with, someone else that you aren't related to, there has been an increase in friendly theft between, roommate situations as well. So if you are in a situation like that, just always keep in mind to keep your information as secure and confidential as much as possible, since those things exist now too. We also have internet and email scams. So essentially social engineering. So basically, go more into that in the next page. You get those emails from someone that's like, I have a great offer for you. You just have to give me your bank account number, your social security number, no big deal. Those sort of emails, or they get you to click on a link and enter in your information that way as well. And I'll tell you the difference between those right on the next page. And then we have social networking fraud, which can happen in, various ways, either through getting, messages from someone you think or, again, clicking on links you think are secure or harmless, but aren't in reality. So it's just kind of an example of all the different ways your personal information can be compromised. All right, so kind of going into those social engineering or email scams, we got spamming, which, basically are a mass amount of emails that are sent to, an email list scammers or fraudsters create. You know, basically, giving you a promise of a great investment or something like that. They're usually very generic. Sometimes they might have created a merge list and they have your first name. But again, they're not very personalized. You can usually tell you're just part of a greater mailing list, or they just might have something like, hey, it's very convincing. Then we have spoofing, which is where you have, a replica created of a legitimate site, either that be Amazon or eBay. And these can be very tricky because sometimes these fraudsters can, create these websites right down to every single detail, where it looks like you're on the official Amazon website or eBay website. And a lot of times they get you to click on these links or get to these sites by sending you an email saying, oh, your password needs to be changed, or someone has hacked into your account, so you need to change your password right now. So they get you to click on a link, you go to a site, you start entering in information, and creating like that new email for your web page, or just putting in maybe your personal information. And that's just an easy way for them to get a hold of it. So if you ever, get in a situation where you get an email from, a website, and sometimes you do get legitimate emails saying your account has been hacked, just be very careful. Make sure always look at the web address just to make sure it's accurate. So an example is ebay.com versus ebuy.com. Just kind of a handy way that these fraudsters are able to trick you because they're able to buy a domain that's very similar onto the official website. And sometimes you can get to these websites by just a typo. And there are places or policies in place to kind of check to make sure that these websites don't exist, or once they do exist, they get shut down as soon as possible. But they still pop up here and there. So you got phishing, which is coaxing victims to visit a fake website, like I said. So we have examples of, getting email from FISA, or, letting you know that there might be some kind of issue with your account and you need to visit the site right now, or something drastic is going to happen. And this is just kind of an example of, one of those phishing attempt emails. Like I mentioned earlier, one of our IT members, Brock, is very on top of making sure that our staff aren't, fall victim to this sort of thing. So he often sends us really fake emails to keep us on our toes and lets us know if we've passed the test or not. Some things that you can see here is you're required to click on a link that isn't going to the official site. You'll often see, typos or really poor grammar, since a lot of times these scammers or fraudsters, aren't native English speakers and that sort of thing, or they, aren't really taking a lot of time to, care to, get you to participate in their scam. They're just kind of waiting for someone to just not really pay attention at that little second to take advantage of you. One thing I did learn about is people are more likely to fall victim to these types of email scams when they're on their phone. And that's just because, as our attention has grown, lesser and lesser, a lot of times when you're on your phone, you're just kind of mindlessly scrolling. Sometimes you'll see an email and you're like, oh no, I need to take care of this. So you don't even go through and read the whole email. You just end up clicking on something or replying to something. And then unfortunately your information is out there. It still happens on desktop, but a lot of times from what studies have shown, people are paying a little bit more attention when it comes to desktop. So, in that case, if you can, maybe just when you do need to look through emails, just take your time at a place when you can just go at your own pace and, making sure you can read everything through. This is from the Federal Trade Commission. Unfortunately, we've had a very chaotic year. And unfortunately, when there has been times of hardship, fortunately, crime goes up, especially when it comes to fraud, because, when people are desperate or in need of funds, they will have to turn to things that aren't necessarily ethical. I'm not saying that a lot of people do this, but there is a small percentage of the public out there, like when they see an opportunity, they're going to go for it. We last saw a huge rise in scams during the last 2008 crash, the recession, that sort of thing. But I'm gonna be honest, it probably pales in comparison to what we have seen during 2020. And during this year, there has just been a number of just different frauds and scams that have taken place, or the technology for these fraud and scams have just advanced completely as well. In fact, the number of fraud and scams that were out there were so bad that the Federal Trade Commission created their own little version of bingo just to kind of educate the public on the different things that are out there currently. I'm sure we've all received a number of robocalls. For me, it's because I had to buy a car last year and they're just letting me know that I'm running out of my warranty. So even a year later, they're still calling me. It's crazy. But you see example of all sorts of things. So one of the most common fraud and scams that are out there, we're surrounded by, the stimulus payments that were sent out to Americans everywhere. So like one of the most common ones is, of course, a fake check scam where you get a check. And a lot of times these checks look nothing like the official economic stimulus check. But people can, there's not a lot of education on there on what these look like. So a lot of times people can get surprised easily. So a lot of times when it comes to these fake check scams, they're going to be either a little bit over of like that $1,400 or $600. And, someone will contact you letting you know, oh, it was a mistake. You weren't supposed to get that $3,000 check. So, you have to send that extra back to us, because why would we make this mistake of sending you a $3,000 check? I don't know. But a lot of times those fake check scams, require you to send some kind of amount of money back, either through Western Union, or a lot of times now it's done through, digital payments like Zelle or PayPal, and those sort of things. Then you have, of course, those calls and texts coming in, letting you know that, we are the IRS. And for some reason, we do not have this information, even though we know everything about you. So please give us your social security number or other confidential information so we can make sure you get your economic stimulus payments. And this isn't exactly, I don't want to say a scam in a traditional sense, but we did see a rise in, cash advance places, giving you that $600 or $1,400 check a little early. But the whole thing is you would have to pay high interest in the long run. And that kind of defeats the purpose of what the purpose of these stimulus checks were for. But unfortunately, when people are in a pinch, they might go to these places and just kind of get that upfront money just because they need it now. So, kind of some tip off if it's a scam is they'll use the word stimulus check or, stimulus payment. The official term is the economic impact payment, at least back in 2020. But those were sort of the terminology that was often used by scammers. And of course, if you do have any questions about how you will receive your economic stimulus payment, of course, go to the IRS website. Another thing I've wanted to notice, and this was a confusion for a lot of people, was sometimes these economic payments came in the form of a debit card. Well, not a debit card, but like a prepaid card where the money would be on it. And a lot of times people thought these were scams and they threw them out, or sometimes these were just really easy for people to get a hold of and steal. So if you ever, came into a situation like that, make sure you visit the IRS website and report it as well. But I'm just letting you know, if you see the little top right corner, that is what that card looked like. Oh, and as a friendly reminder, the tax season was extended and taxes are due on May 17th, in case you haven't done that already. And, depending on what your situation was last year, you might not have gotten those economic payments or those sort of things. So, make sure you do your research about that and just making sure you get the full credit or even just a slightly better refund. But that was just a slight reminder since I know it's coming up. And as another reminder, if you haven't already filled out the poll, If it pops up, we would just appreciate if you take the time to fill that up. All right, I'm just gonna let that hang out there and we're just gonna continue. All right, so this is another common scam, and I'm sad to say I took in it. So a lot of us that are on social media, and usually I know better than to post when I'm on vacation or those sort of things. When I got my vaccine, you know, I was very excited. So I took a picture of course, my vaccine card. I know it wasn't the only one, but little to my knowledge, this is also part of a trending scam right now. And that's because fraudsters and scammers are able to take the information that are on those cards, such as, you know, your birth date and name, and they can kind of connect it to other information that is available on the internet. And this is especially common if you have a very unique name or you just have a very good presence on the internet. So this could put you in trouble. And they can also pair that, especially if they know exactly where you got vaccinated from. So I'm just gonna let you guys know, because hopefully none of you are fraudsters and scammers. I was at Stanley Marketplace. So someone could take the information of, let's say I was at Stanley Marketplace, my name and phone number, and then, you know, somehow get a hold of that information, call me up, and then kind of request additional information from me just to make sure I'm confirmed for my second vaccine or something along that lines. That's just generally what is happening. And you know, these fraudsters aren't stupid. Sometimes what they do is they'll also register for these clinics, and then they can see who the person facilitating are or who they are and just get other information that way, so they can have a greater insight, so they can get this information from those that, you know, are participating in these clinics. So, you know, just a note, please don't take pictures of your vaccine card. You can take pictures of like your sticker, or just take pictures of yourself, maybe not at the official vaccine site, because you just want to give these fraudsters and scammers as little information as possible. But that was just a note, that is part of a trending scam right now. But yeah, fortunately, a little bit of info can go a very long way, especially if you're just not very knowledgeable about the tactics that are out there. So like, let's say you're someone that just isn't aware that people will call you and do social engineering to get a hold of your personal information. You can definitely fall victim to these sort of things. No, so don't do that. All right, this is something not just us, but a lot of financial institutions saw an increase of, and actually just a little bit before COVID started, we know we had someone coming in, or not coming in, sending text messages to our members who weren't us. And a lot of times these text messages will look like they're coming from Fitzsimons Credit Union, and they will ask for very confidential information, such as your social security number, your debit card number, sometimes your login information. And sometimes they'll make the excuse like maybe there's something wrong with your account and we need to verify that you were the correct person we're speaking to, so we, you know, can share the information that we have on your account, which is silly. We will never request this information from you. We also will not, you know, call you or send you a text message requesting it. The best way is for you to call us directly, and so we can speak about your account. A lot of times we'll ask about the transactions are on your account to verify your identity. We know better now not to talk about your social security number and those sort of things, since that is very valuable information. And this isn't just going for us, this goes for, you know, any financial institution you're with, bank or credit union. If you suspect that you've been targeted for fraud, make sure you contact that bank or credit union right away, so we can lock up that account and protect your finances and information as much as we can. So other scams to be aware of course, we have like the fake check scams, and all fake check scams are very similar. They're always going to be, maybe you get a check slightly over the amount. Sometimes it's a check that is the exact amount, and that person's going to request that you either cash that check or direct those funds somewhere else. And essentially what happens in these fake check scams, that check is not a legitimate check. It bounces. So when you send those funds over, you are basically responsible for the funds that were supposedly on that check. So like, for example, let's say you get a check for $3,000. That person tells you that, oh, it's a mistake, I didn't mean to send you that check, or send you those $3,000. Please send it back to me. You'll be out $3,000 on your account, unfortunately. So just always be aware, whether it's a contest you win that you weren't really aware that you entered, but somehow you won, those sort of things. And those kind of have gone into, payment scams. So for example, if you use PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, there's been an increase of people accidentally sending payments to someone and then requesting that you send that payment back. If that does happen to you, you can tell that person that they can reverse the payment themselves, but I would also contact PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, or whichever platform you're using right away, and letting them know of the situation, just to protect yourself as much as possible. And whatever you do, do not send that money back. Just kind of let it just chill in that account. And a lot of times it will disappear, because if you send that money back, it will actually come out of your own funds and not from the funds that the person sent. And sometimes these can come from someone stealing, either someone's debit card, credit card, or sometimes even gift cards, and sending funds around that way. So just be very careful, because a lot of times those funds you're receiving are stolen funds or stolen money anyways. All right. So those are just some tips to keep your account safe. Make sure you check your financial accounts frequently. I would at least say since I use my accounts a lot, I always check almost on a weekly basis, but I think you should definitely check on a monthly basis, just to make sure all your information is safe, no one has compromised your account, and all the funds are where they need to be. And it's easier than ever with online and mobile banking. You don't necessarily have to go into a branch location to do that. If you do have e-statements or physical statements sent to you in the mail, make sure you look through them. Sorry, I was just checking messages, so let me just go back real quick. All right. If you do need to send information to your financial institution regarding your account, make sure when it comes to confidential information, you either log into your online banking and send messages that way, because that is a more secure way of sending confidential information than sending it from your personal Gmail account and that sort of thing. And that's because a lot of online or mobile banking platforms have the option for you to go into that account, send information. So let's say you go into your account and you have a question about maybe an additional fee, or I don't know, something that doesn't look right, or maybe a loan payment wasn't made into your account and that sort of thing. So if you're entering in, information regarding, your account number, it's always best to log into that online banking and send a message like that directly versus sending it through your personal email. Or you, of course, can just give the financial institution a call. I know it's a bit of a hassle sometimes, but that's just the best way to help keep your information as safe as possible. A lot of financial institutions now have security alerts related to your account. So if you do have the ability, make sure you enroll in those and just make sure you're paying attention to those. If you receive like a message that asked if you made this, I would say payment or not, or that kind of thing, or made this transaction, just kind of keep aware of those sort of things and enroll them if you can. So let's say if your financial institution doesn't have an app like that, there's a lot of legitimate apps that you can enroll in to help keep that information safe. So for example, a very popular app is Mint, and you can actually batch all your accounts. So not batch, but link all your accounts. So let's say you have a Wells Fargo account or a credit union account with Fitzsimons. You can link those accounts together. So when you log into Mint, you're able to see, all the funds that are in those accounts and that sort of thing. And I've used Mint too, and Mint does actually a really great job. If it sees kind of something that's going in there that's not normal, they'll send you a message as well. So it's just kind of a backup if your financial institution isn't currently enrolled or has something set up for, suspicious activity. This is more for Fitzsimons credit union members, but we do put alerts on our site. So for example, if you were to, log into online banking, we put in messages. So let's say we are aware someone's been targeting our members, or, there's just like a trending scam out there. We'll put information on that in the right-hand side. emergency scams. So these can happen in a lot of different ways. So a lot of times it's someone posing as a loved one, and they're in financial need. Maybe they are in jail, or maybe they're in the emergency room, or something like that. It is very common for those that are in the military, and just having a spouse overseas can be very stressful. And of course, fraud and scammers definitely take advantage of that. So they might contact that spouse, letting them know that they are in peril and they need to send funds right away, or else something really bad is going to happen to them. And this can happen, via phone, text, even, social media like Facebook Messenger and that kind of thing. Having someone pose as your loved one. And of course, scammers and fraudsters love to play on your emotions. And so they know when you're in a very alert state, you are not thinking logically. So they're hoping to get you there so they can get you to react quickly, and get the money that they need, or funds that they want, or information that they want at that time. These can sometimes have very convincing information, and sometimes they can get this information from your social media profiles, or just information that's available on the internet to kind of add and make the story more convincing. This can be very difficult if, someone is targeting you by email or text message, since you don't really have very good signifiers that this is the loved one that you're speaking to. With phone, some things you want to, be aware of is that person's voice. And if you're ever really suspicious, what you can do is, maybe you can verify where that person is located, sort of thing. Like, for example, if they give you the name of a hospital or, a jail or that kind of thing, you're at least able to look up that information and phone number and hang up, and then maybe call that hospital or jail directly, or that sort of thing, just to verify the story. But generally in those situations, they're not going to ask you to, if it's a hospital or even a jail, require you to wire money right away. You should be able to have time to, think and get things together. So if you are suspicious, you can always hang up on that person. And then you always can go in and contact that person directly with the phone number you have on file for them. Because a lot of times, your loved one is safe. They aren't in any peril. So you should be able to contact them directly. When it comes to things like text messages or email, a lot of times these fraudsters, even though they have a lot of good information on your loved one, there's going to be little differences in the language they use. So for example, if they are, starting out the message with hello, and your loved one always says, hey, that could be a signifier that is not the correct person talking to you. Other things you can do is, of course, ask more personal information or questions just to, keep verifying. You can ask things that someone can't get off the internet, or real life experiences and that sort of thing. Like I said before, if you are suspicious, you can end communication and then just recontact them with the information you have on file. Whatever you do not wire money, do not send cash or gift cards or any of those sort of things. Because once that money is gone, you really don't have a good way to get it back. And generally in these situations, you really wouldn't have been required to send funds anyways like that. There's usually going to be a more official, legitimate way to go about things, especially when it comes to being in an emergency room and those sort of things. And like I said, it can be really difficult to get these funds back once they are sent over. Then, there's always a chance that they do find that person. Maybe there'll be some kind of settlement. But generally, if you do experience something like that, or you've been targeted, always report it to the Federal Trade Commission. You can either do that on their website or by calling 877-382-4357. And, that isn't just for you. Just reporting it, can help save others from, falling victim to something very similar or similar scam. Because once they're active, they're just going to keep trying until they get the right person. I'm sure we've all received robocalls. So of course these are, pre-recorded calls, designed to sell you on something. A very popular one was someone impersonating the IRS and that sort of thing, letting you know, maybe you didn't file your taxes in time, or oh, maybe we're holding your economic stimulus payment and you have to contact us to get it. And And, sometimes these scams or these robocalls are really only used to see if a number is working, because I have a bad habit of just picking up phone calls regardless. But, basically what happens with these robocalls is someone, picks up or answers that robocall. It signifies to those scammers that this is still an active number, and they can target you for more advanced scams in the future, since they know that is a working, legitimate number. So like in relation to, let's say, debt collection, that is a legal thing. Certain political calls are also okay when it comes to robocalls or charities or those kind of things. When it comes to debt, if you do have debt collectors, you are allowed to let them know that you do not wish to be contacted by phone, and they are supposed to respect that when it comes to that, if you are in a situation like that. One thing you can do to reduce the number of robocalls or those solicitations is getting yourself on the do not call list. I know it takes about 30 to 60 days for it to officially go through. So let's say if you go in tonight and, register, just keep in mind it's not going to happen overnight. There is a period where it takes time to be processed. I think it's usually 30 days, but because of COVID and everything, I think there is a backlog of things. So I'm just going to say 30 to 60 just to be on the safer side. And you can also use that to report any trending robocalls or unwanted calls that you are receiving. One thing I want to touch on is the number of, I would want to say, online or shopping scams that are out there. As you can see, it has definitely been on the rise. I think this can happen for a couple reasons. One, people are now more active online than ever before, and also those shopping or online scams have just gotten so much more sophisticated over time. So just some tips on how to stay safe shopping online. Always make sure that the business you're shopping from is legitimate. There's lots of scam sites, or I would say just pop-up shop sites where it's from a business that really doesn't have any history, but they're able to put items on the site that are very enticing. So you'll want to purchase from the site, and a lot of times they're like at really unbelievable deals. You'll often see these like pop-up or scam sites kind of do advertisements on social media a lot of times. So let's say you're going through Facebook, you'll see let's say a cool pair of shoes, and these cool pairs of shoes are at a ridiculously low price. So of course you're going to want to visit that site, check it out, that sort of thing. But a lot of times what happens when you purchase from these sites, you might get an item that is nowhere close to what you wanted to purchase, or you just might not receive that item at all. So a lot of times these sites are happening overseas, and there's really just little control of what we can do when you are purchasing from something that is overseas. When it comes to paying for things online, always, if you can, do it with a credit card. That is just because there's just better built-in consumer protections. So like, let's say you purchase from this site this pair of shoes and you don't end up getting those pair of shoes, you'll definitely have an easier time getting that credit back to you. Or let's say you got charged twice from a site, you're just going to have an easier time challenging that charge to your card versus if you were done on a debit card, since with a debit card you're essentially paying in cash. So let's say you give that $20 to someone, it's really hard just to get that $20 back. I'm just using that as an example. One thing to always look for the S in the HTTPS, just to check for the security of a site. This isn't necessarily always a scam, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're opting into a subscription or one of those subscription boxes. Just be aware, sometimes they'll give you like a free trial or a free box, but then after that, you're going to get a monthly charge of $100 or $50. So just be careful of what you're opting into when it comes to those sort of things. And kind of what I would mention, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, because a lot of times someone isn't just giving you something for free just because they're hoping to entice you, so they can kind of just keep you on that charge roll. Another type of trending scam that we've seen is delivery scams. So like, let's say you order something from Amazon, and then let's say you get a call or a text or an email saying that the item has been dropped off, or they're having trouble locating the item, but you need to click on this link to, help fix whatever information, is making it difficult for your item to be delivered to you. Sometimes it's something you didn't even order, and it might come through that someone is sending you a gift. So again, it just kind of goes back to just be careful of any, suspicious links, anything that's unsolicited and that sort of thing. And if it is from a company like Amazon or eBay, you can always contact the seller or, website directly when it comes to these sort of issues. And of course, use any tracking code info just to kind of see where your item is in transit if you have ordered something. Just an example of people purchasing things online and not exactly getting what they expected. Have any of us fallen victim to this? If you have, just write it in the comments. Tell us what you ordered and what you got instead. I know I've fallen victim to a dress scam once, and after that, I learned my lesson and never did it again. But some of these can be quite hilarious. So hopefully we only make these mistakes once, and hopefully it's a relatively, harmless lesson. It doesn't cost you too much, but, just some things to be aware of. I kind of talked about this before, which are money transfer scams. This can often fall under, romance scams or a job scam or a lottery scam, or maybe you're purchasing something over Craigslist scam / buying scam. Traditionally these were done through, Western Union. I know Western Union's been really trying to clean up their act since they know they played a huge part of these, check and money transfer scams historically. But they have advanced to Zelle, Venmo, and PayPal. Like I said, just kind of be aware of, any checks that you receive or any accidental like money transfers, especially if you didn't facilitate them and then you don't really know this person, they're asking you to send you back. I guess it is like a huge key thing. If it is someone you don't know, or even kind of going back to like those, scams where someone is contacting you, like your uncle, and your uncle, let's say, is in Canada and needs money right now, and they're, conversing with you over email, of course you should be aware that potentially someone either hacked into your uncle's account, is just trying to get you to send money and those sort of things. If you have been part of this scam, or you had a loved one that's part of your scam, or not your scam, but these types of scams, kind of also be aware of what is recovery scams. Because like I mentioned before, a lot of times once those monies are money or credit cards, or not credit cards, but a lot of times gift cards are sent to someone, it is almost impossible to get them back and, be reimbursed for those sort of things. A lot of times there are these companies that, claim they can help you get those funds back or recover those, funds, or target that scammer and, put them to justice and that sort of thing. But a lot of times that's not really true. And a lot of times these recovery scams will require you to pay a fee and those sort of things. So, there are some legitimate, recovery, things that are out there, but generally you would want to go through your local law enforcement or any of the consumer agencies just to verify and make sure they're legitimate, since more often than not, they're part of their own little scam. And of course, you or someone has been part of these scams, make sure you contact law enforcement, just so there's a record that you were targeted, maybe part of this, because there's always a chance maybe way farther down the line they might catch the person who did this, and they can find out that you were targeted on that list, and maybe you might get a refund at some point. I wouldn't guarantee it, but at least there's a paper trail, and you can also help protect others at the same time. Just some things to look out for in a money transfer scam. The circumstances seem too good to be true. Of course, you've never met this person, or, this person's doing a job, trying to masquerade as someone you know. And there's always pressure to send funds quickly. Like they always try to put you on a really quick timeline because they know if you take a moment to kind of, analyze the situation and that sort of thing, they know they've lost you and they're not very likely to get those funds back. So, or not those funds back, but you're not very likely to send those funds over to them. So they're always going to put pressure and, sometimes they kind of will make it like a life or death sort of thing, just because they are trying to play on your emotions. Again, going on to what I mentioned earlier, common scam is card skimming. Since the, introduction of the chip cards, these type of skimming devices, aren't as common, since the goal is to get rid of those magnetic strips on the back of your card where your information is stored. Admittedly, the chip cards have existed, I want to say, overseas for, I would say, almost 20 years or so, when America has been really slow to adapt to it. So some of those cards still have those magnetic strips where these skimming devices, are still able to get your card information stored on there, and create a replicate card. Because the goal of like the chip was it would basically randomize information, so it would be different each time when it comes to transactions. So it'd be really difficult for them to make a copy of a card, or get that information of your financial accounts. Always a good thing to have is a PIN to help keep that card secure. Admittedly, these card skimming devices still exist on, let's say, gas station machines, I think, or pay pumps, those sort of things. That's because when we started introducing the chip card, they were one of the last devices that were required to make the switch to accepting chip cards. And I know actually supposedly it was supposed to be of October of last year, supposedly, that all of these pay pump machines were supposed to have, a different, payment system altogether. But I don't know if because of COVID, if that has been changed or not. But you might still see these ones, but they're becoming less and less common. Unfortunately, scammers like to adapt. So now what you have are shimming devices, and they're just these little flat pieces of metal that they can, put into the machine. And then of course they use this little device right here to get the information that is on your chip cards. And these are much harder to detect versus the skimming devices, where they would often be placed over the machine. A trick I learned is sometimes if you go up to like an ATM or gas station, just kind of mess with the, card slot a bit just to make sure it was sturdily in there and someone didn't place a device over the main device and that sort of thing. So that's just something to be aware of. Fortunately, I would say these are really hard to detect, but I also think it also is harder for scammers to implement into the machines than it was for like the skimming devices, but they still exist out there. So what to do if your card info has been compromised? Of course, notify your local law enforcement. Of course, notify your financial institution. So let's say if you have a card with Chase, make sure you let Chase know that info has been compromised. Like I said, always report to your bank, that sort of thing, or credit union. So I don't know if anyone has used like mobile wallet devices where, like, let's say you use your phone to tap to pay. To a point, those are actually more secure than using a traditional card, since it is using your phone, creates an additional entry point that scammers or fraudsters have to go through to basically access that data. So as of right now, using your mobile wallet or, creating a digital version of your card to pay is currently more secure. But, fraudsters and scammers always like to adapt. So I am curious to see how they're going to basically overcome that in the future. But at the time, this is actually one of the most secure ways that you can make payments is through basically using like a mobile wallet, like Google Pay and Apple Pay and that sort of thing, and going to devices and just doing the tap to pay function. As of right now, it is the most secure way to make payments. This is just information for those that have an account with Fitzsimons Credit Union on numbers to call if your debit card, personal credit card, or business credit card have been compromised. But of course, you can find this information on our website as well. Data breaches. For a while, they weren't as common, but they have come back full force. We've of course learned about the ones where you make a payment at a store, and of course, your data gets compromised that way. A really popular thing that I've seen more is basically data being leaked from social media platforms. So like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. And one of the most common ways that, let's say, your information can be compromised is basically sharing that social information with a third-party site. I don't know. I'm sure some of you have visited sites where it allows you to create, let's say, a profile, but it asks you if you want to create a profile using, let's say, your Google account or your Facebook account, because goodness knows you don't want to go through and type in all that information and create a unique password and login. You could just link it to your Facebook or Google account. So that is one of the main ways that information has been compromised these days, is basically linking, those, I would say, like, those main accounts that we use and those accounts that we pretty much have all our personal information on, to kind of log on to these third-party sites that we really don't know much about. But sometimes it comes through when you see someone take a fun quiz and you're like, well, I want to take that quiz too. I want to know what emoji I am. So you visit this site, it asks you to create a profile, and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to link it to my Facebook, and now I'm going to find out what emoji I am. So it's just kind of one of the basic ways that your information can be compromised from your social channels that we've seen lately. But of course, there has been ones with, let's say, T-Mobile has had, I think, 5 data breaches within the past 2 to 3 years. Sometimes this is coming through on, your SIM card being traded from either someone internally in the store, or someone has a device where they're able to scan your SIM card and get really confidential information that way from it. So generally, it's just, try to keep just be careful of, let's say, what apps you're logging into when you're out and about, because sometimes that's how information can get compromised from people that have scanners. And of course, just make sure, let's say, if you are at a T-Mobile store, make sure your phone is not out of sight, and just kind of, check and see what's happening if you have someone else handling your device. A good site just to kind of keep track of the latest fraud and scams is fraud.org. You can go /latest breaches to kind of see, what the most recent ones are. It is also a site where you can also, report fraud and scams, and also if you have been part of a data breach as well. This is more geared towards those that are with Fitzsimons Credit Union, but we were coming up with our own Fitzsimons Card Manager app. And what that can do, it gives you the ability, let's say you load up your credit card and debit card, you can turn that card on and off. Very handy in the case, let's say you left your card at home or you don't know where it is, you can just turn it off, and that would block from whoever has it from using it. You can also establish transaction controls. So this is very helpful for people that maybe are on a budget, or maybe are, let's say you have a teen and you're, trying to limit how much is spent at, like, I don't know, a clothing store, that kind of thing. You can also set geographic locations. So for example, let's say you have your cart open to, the state of Colorado and Wyoming, because sometimes you travel a lot to Wyoming. But let's say if your card happens to go out of those geographic locations, it will automatically block those transactions. So it's just an example. It will give you alerts when your card is used or exceeds transaction controls set by you. And also send you text messages or let you know if a transaction has been attempted or declined. So this hasn't been officially released yet, but it'll be integrated into the mobile app within the next month or so. I've tested it out. I did a test using, basically making a purchase to my Amazon account because I wanted to block all digital transactions or transactions made online. Just to let you know, it did work. It actually did a great job. I made a purchase through Amazon. It blocked it right away. I got a text message saying that a transaction was made on Amazon. I also got an email. I still got charged because, for example, I have multiple cards on Amazon. So I did our Fitzsimons card just to test it, but I also had another credit card on there. You know, Amazon was so nice. They're like, oh, we didn't get a payment from this card. It's okay, we use this card. So we're all good. So it's just something to keep in mind if, let's say, maybe you're making purchases for Amazon or a site and you have multiple cards on file that maybe aren't part of the app. You know, sometimes they'll just use, you know, the second form of payment they have on file. So that's just something to keep note. For those that don't have a Fitzsimons account, you can also check out Card Valet, and that's, you know, Card Valet, VALET, and that's almost exactly the same thing, and pretty much almost anyone can use that to also manage their cards. So if you don't have an account with Fitzsimons, you can also check out Card Valet as an alternative. But it is a great tool. But in the case of Amazon, just keep in mind, if you have multiple cards on file and one gets blocked, it's okay, they'll use the other one. Just some tips if you're on social media. You know, be careful of your personal information, such as don't use your exact birth date, address, phone number, or even your email. As those who were really early to social media, unfortunately, I think some of my information is just out there on the web, just because, you know, when you started using social media at like 12 or 13, you don't think about this stuff. So I'm sure I have a lot of information out there that I don't even know of. But if you have, you know, loved ones, those are really young, like let's say you have a preteen who's starting to use the internet, you know, try to let them know this information so they can just keep their, you know, personal information as safe as possible. Again, avoid, you know, fun quizzes. So sometimes this was really popular back in the MySpace days. Again, I'm going to show my age here, where let's say, you know, someone would, you know, copy and paste a, you know, quiz or some kind of fun survey, and then you would copy and paste and put in your own data. So for example, it would be like, oh, what was the name of your first pet? And a lot of times these little fun quizzes or surveys are answers to very common security questions. So, you know, what is your mom's maiden name, or those sort of things. Those are just things to kind of be aware of. Or again, in the case of, let's say you have to log into a third-party website using your Facebook or Google just to find out, you know, what emoji you are, that's also something to be aware of. Don't accept unknown friend requests. Don't use Facebook or Google or any of your other social media, you know, profiles to log into other sites, especially if you weren't really familiar on that site and you're just kind of logging into it because you were bored or you're not really thinking and you don't really know if they're a legitimate site. Be careful about the personal information you post online. So for example, don't post your vaccine card online. Don't do it. And always just make sure your privacy settings are up to date. Oh yeah, so I don't know if anyone has used Snapchat. And I haven't used Snapchat in a while, but Snapchat used to have this really creepy feature where if, you know, you were using it, it could tell, you know, the people that you were friends with, where you were located. And of course, if you were to pair that with like you posting, you know, photos, let's say you're at like a club or at a restaurant, you know, you might be friends with someone who really, you know, isn't really your friend. And that would just tip them off like, oh, they're not home right now. So I can just, you know, go into their place, or maybe, you know, this person just might not have the best intentions for you, so they know exactly where you are. So again, I wasn't originally aware of this until I found it by accident, but you know, sometimes you're sharing information you're not really aware that you're sharing. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think this feature still exists and you do have the ability to turn it off, but it is just really creepy to know, you know, the information that is being shared with others. So just some things to see if your computer has been, you know, hacked or has some spyware or malware on it. You know, it's working slower than usual. You have programs, you know, constantly shutting down, or sometimes that computer will not shut down or restart. You'll get a lot of pop-up ads. Again, this is really common about 10 years ago when these sort of things existed for a lot of, your computer being compromised. Right now, it's not as obvious. You won't normally see pop-ups. It will often display websites or programs that you didn't, mean to open. It will send emails or just correspondence that you did not initiate. And this can also happen on your cell phone. So that's always just make sure to password protect it. And one way or another, if you can always do like the fingerprint to open or unlock your phone. A lot of newer phones can actually recognize your face, and you'll scan that to unlock it. So always just make sure you're up to date on, security software to keep your computer safe. And always be careful of, let's say you're at a cafe or in a public place, the, activity. So, you can do your online banking, but it's not always in your best interest because you never know who is around. Sometimes people have, maybe the best way I could put it is like scanners where they're able to kind of view the web page you are seeing and kind of get information from you that way. It's not very common, and a lot of scammers don't use that, but there could be someone that is more advanced out there that is seeking that information. So like I said, you can get an ad blocker, just to secure your online experience. So there's some examples of programs that are out there: AdBlock, ProperBlock, which can be the best option if you're using Chrome. It just depends on, your preferred browser. Depending if you have like a Windows or, an Apple product, you can use Avast. If you are using Microsoft, there's Microsoft Windows 10. It has Windows Defender on it. Since our information is constantly being compromised, we also suggest that you look into, identity theft protection, and that can be through Kasasa Protect, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. That's our version, but there's also LifeLock and ID Shield, and a lot of times I'll just go in and talk about Kasasa Protect since they all are very similar. But what they do, it monitors your personal information, especially on the dark web. That's unfortunately where a lot of our personal information is ending up on these days, is on the dark web for people to either purchase either on an email list and those sort of things. So they'll often, these different services will monitor the dark web. They will contact you if they do see anything that's suspicious or they notice your information is on there. And in the case of, let's say, your information has been compromised, they are just, a great point of contact because they kind of can help handle everything for you, replace any important documents, those sort of things. They can also help you restore your information and keep it safe as well. But they all pretty much do the same thing. We have what is called Kasasa Protect, and there's no contract to it. You can cancel at any time. It's generally $11 per month, but if you have what's essentially one of our Kasasa checking or savings accounts, it's a bit of a lower rate. It's at $8 a month. And that's if you have one of our Kasasa checking or savings accounts. And those are amazing accounts, by the way, but just something to keep in mind. And they generally all fall within a similar price range. But if it is something you're really concerned about, I would check out each of those. And you can always compare and see which one is right for you. I'm just going to go back to that page just so you can take a look at it: LifeLock, ID Shield, or Kasasa Protect. And again, I will send this information over to you all at the end. Another good app I always suggest is your financial institution app, whether that would be Wells Fargo or Chase. I suggest just having an app of each one of your financial institutions. It just makes it easy for you just to, keep track of your accounts, making sure everything is up to date. And it just makes it easier to say if, you see something is wrong, you can just log into that app and contact their communication center team. So we can just, make sure your information and finances are safe and protected. Other helpful apps, I know I mentioned this earlier, Mint. It's a great app. It helps keep track of your different accounts all in one place. We also have mobile wallets, which are currently one of the most secure ways to make payments. Fortunately, not everywhere accepts the mobile wallets yet, but it's becoming more and more common. Unfortunately, once they probably become more common, we'll see hackers or fraudsters coming up with something. But right now, I haven't heard of anything of them kind of getting through that. So right now they're a bit more safer. And that's Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, or Google Pay. Let's see, I think another app is like Find My Phone. So it's a phone locator app. There's different ones. Always make sure you check the ratings on those and reviews, since there's different ones out there. They can be really helpful, especially in the case where maybe someone has taken your phone or you lost your phone. You can, help find it. Just in case, let's say you're maybe out and about and then maybe you accidentally left it at a restaurant. It's a really, convenient way to know that it's here, and maybe it's not, out in the middle of nowhere somewhere. Kind of one drawback to that app is it can be a, personal locator. So that's just something to keep in mind. Fees usually apply for those sorts of apps. But Find My Phone is the most common one that I know of. We also have LastPass, which is a password generator. So basically, anytime you log into, let's say, a website, it generates a new password each time, keeping your account safe so it's not the same password. Generally, fees do also apply for LastPass as well. And I know there's like different levels depending if, let's say, you're using more of a business account or personal account, but it's also a really good app to keep your information safe. For those of us that are doing it the old-fashioned way, here's just some password security tips. Make sure you change your passwords, constantly. Don't use the same password for all sites. Generally, you want to have a longer password. You want to use as many characters as possible, include, numbers, symbols, upper and lowercase letters, and, punctuation. Just a tip is, when choosing a password, use a mnemonic device to help you remember it. So for example, we're going to use a phrase, and that phrase is, I love singing in the rain every single day. And then, using that phrase, you can, create your own unique password kind of based on that. So it becomes like and then you have like the heart symbol, and then you're using another mixture of like letters and characters and that kind of thing to imitate that phrase you wrote out. And it's just an easy way to remember it, and it's just makes it really hard for people to guess that password. Funny thing, I think, people make fun of the younger generation for not remembering phone numbers. I think we just replaced it all with memorizing passwords and logins, to be honest. Identity theft. This often, happens when someone gets a hold of your name, social security number, any other, confidential information. They can use that to apply for jobs or open up accounts in your name, and that sort of thing. And sometimes they're even more advanced, where they get a hold of your own fingerprints or iris scans and that sort of thing. What happens in the case that it does happen? If you are a victim, you might not notice any signs. And this can be very common. Like I said, I think friendly theft was the example I have, where you have a relative, taking the information of a minor. And of course, when you have a child, they're not old enough to open up their own loans or accounts. So, that's just stuff that's not on your radar. So that's one of the most common things that we see happen. But for the rest of us, you might see unauthorized charges on your bank or credit card. You'll start seeing bills, from unfamiliar companies, or sometimes you'll stop receiving mail altogether. You might notice issues with like your devices, or, you start receiving debt collection calls, or you start getting denied for loans or, accounts, or even just having issues with, when it comes to, the job application process and those sort of things. So anytime, someone asks you for your social security number, you want to protect that as much as possible. So, always ask why it's needed. Honestly, if someone's asking me for my social security number, and we really don't have any business for them to, give me, or not give me, but have them have that information, I'm honestly just probably not going to communicate with them at all. Make sure you don't have it on your driver's license. Make sure you don't keep it in your wallet. Make sure you kind of treat it as like a very, something that needs to be protected at all costs. So you might want to have it locked up somewhere. And you might want to just be, very careful of the people you want knowing where that is. And hopefully, you have one or two other people that know where your social security card is in case of an emergency, but you also want to protect where it's located as much as possible as well. Again, never use the last 4 digits of your social security as your PIN. I would also say, of course, never use your birth date or any other confidential information as your PIN as well. Of course, don't have it printed on checks or written on checks or any of those sort of things. We have a whole webinar on, credit and, reports and scores. So, and that's on our YouTube channel if you want to view it, but just kind of go over things real quick. You are entitled to check your credit once from each of the credit bureaus once annually. So for example, the free credit bureaus are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So once a year, you can check your report from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian once per year. A lot of times people will batch these up. So for example, or, split these up. So maybe they'll check their TransUnion report, in January, and then like June, they might check another. And then later on the year, they might check another. The data will differ a little bit, but for the most part, the information on one report should be on the other. Whenever you check those reports, you want to make sure all of the information on there is accurate. Make sure there's no credit cards or loans that are on there that you didn't open up, or any jobs that are on there that you are employers that you haven't worked for. And if you do see anything that is wrong, make sure you file it with that credit bureau. And I've been told that supposedly the credit bureaus do speak with each other. So let's say you file a report with TransUnion, they're supposed to notify the other credit bureaus. But just in case, if let's say you see an error on your TransUnion report, you'll want to contact each of the bureaus just to make sure all your bases are covered, and you don't want to hear that maybe TransUnion didn't pass the information on to Experian or that sort of thing. You can check your credit reports for free on annualcreditreport.com. So that's the only site where you can check for them completely free. So for example, not even going to like a lot of times the Experian or Equifax site, can you even check them for completely free? A lot of times they might let you check it for free for 6 months, and then they might have a fee on top of that. So always just make sure you're going to this site. You can also call this number. I will admit the annualcreditreport.com site isn't the prettiest site. I feel like it's existed for 20 years in the form that it is, but it is the official site. Of course, be aware of any email offers that offer free credit reports and those sort of thing. And I'm going to touch on this in a moment. You probably have noticed that more and more financial institutions are allowing you to receive your credit score for free. And sometimes you're able to access your credit report for free. And as long as you are with your legitimate financial institution, those should be accurate. A lot of times it's just from one of the credit bureaus. You're not going to see it from all 3 of them. So for example, Fitzsimons has a partnership with TransUnion. So we do show your TransUnion credit score, and you're able to view your TransUnion report for free as much as you want. And again, you can just log in through our online banking and then access this feature and pull up your TransUnion report and just make sure everything on there is valid. But I've seen Chase do that as well. So it's becoming a more common thing. Just keep in mind, it's usually with just one of the credit bureaus. It's not going to be with all 3 of them. All right, thank you all for hanging out with me this evening. So some homework I have for you is, make sure to enroll in your online and, banking, and download the, banking apps if you have them. I always do recommend Mint. I think it's a great app, especially if you don't want to download every single financial app, because they also do, keep track of any fraudulent activity. But I would say downloading each mobile app that you have a financial institution is definitely a good move. You can always download other helpful apps as well. Like I said, you can always do your research and just kind of decide which ones are best for you. Check to install ad blocker, antivirus software, create a series of secure password and PINs. Make sure you are checking your credit score and credit report at least annually. And you can also register for scam alerts from this Federal Trade Commission. They do send out emails for any trending scams. So if you go to the Federal Trade Commission website, you'll see on the front page a place where you can register to receive those emails of any trends that are occurring. And also you can consider identity theft protection, especially considering data breaches are becoming more and more common. And honestly, I'm just kind of thinking it might just be a way of life that our personal data is just out there somewhere if you are present online, which is a sad fact, but it just seems to be happening more and more. I just want to add, we do have a financial education section on our website. So you can always visit our website, go to the Fitzsimons CU, and just go down to the financial education tab. And you can also, reach out to us as well. Oh, it does look like we're a little over time. So I do want to announce the winner of the gift card. So I want to thank you all for your patience. Let's see. The winner of the gift card is Lawrence Martin. Congrats, Lawrence. I'm going to be sending you an email and then we can discuss on how you want to receive that gift card. Let's see. But yeah, we're just going to open it up for a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the comments. Congrats, Lawrence. All right, I haven't seen any questions, so let me just make sure we didn't miss any. Again, I want to thank you all for attending this evening. I hope you did learn something. All right, I'm just gonna wait one moment, but if you wanna log off, feel free to do so. I wanna thank you all again for joining us this evening. And as a reminder, if you haven't already answered the poll, please do. I will be sending up a follow-up email with a link to this presentation as well as other helpful resources. I see my phone was hacked. Is it bad to do mobile banking? Yes, if your phone has been compromised, I would not do any mobile banking at the moment. Have you taken it into T-Mobile or, any of, Verizon or those places that you got your phone from? It might be in your best interest to just get a brand new device. I would be careful of transferring over that SIM card. So that SIM card might have some kind of malware on it that could be harming your phone. But at the time being, yes, I would notify the police. Are you in Aurora? Because depending on where you're at, you would want to notify the police that are closest to you. But yes, Denver, yeah, you would want to notify Denver police then. But as far as doing mobile banking, I would avoid that at all costs right now. Because just depending on what it is, they might be able to get a hold of, your login information that way, or they might be doing scans of your activity when you're logging into it. One thing to keep in mind, I don't know what the situation is. I did have a situation with my phone where it was called ghost touch. And basically what happens is your screen might be cracked. So basically what happens, it becomes ultra sensitive to anything touching the screen. So it makes it appear like it is being hacked, but it's not, but it will open up apps and emails. It's really annoying. I just had to get a new phone. Hopefully that is the situation. It's not really hacked. There's just something physically wrong with your phone. And it's just being ultra sensitive. But either way, you'll probably need to replace your device. Gotcha. So it just keeps messing around with the keys, it sounds like. But if you want, Mary, I can send you an email a little later with just some helpful links to get you by. But I would say contact Denver police, and you might want to look at getting a new phone and just be careful of transferring that SIM card over. Make sure when you do go into the store let them know of your situation. Of course. Does anyone else have any questions this evening? All right, if I don't hear from anyone, I just want to thank you all again. And you can always reply back to that email I sent. And if you have any questions on there, yeah, feel free to send them that way. I want to thank you all again for joining us this evening. You did a great job. Not everyone just spends their evenings learning more information. So I just want to give you all, a great kudos for that. Thank you all again, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.